The tight end position this season has been all over the place, and in today's video, we're going to help you guys assess the madness, break things down, and try to figure out who you should actually start and sit at the tight end position in week number 3. We're going to go through all 16 games on the slate for week number 3, and by the end of today's video, you should know exactly who should be in your lineup. Before we get on into things, though, I would like to ask that if you are new to the channel and you don't have enjoyed today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 3 tight end start or sit decisions for the 2025 fantasy football season. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the Miami Dolphins at the no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Now, the philosophy of starting Dalton Kincaid is incredibly simple in this matchup. The Buffalo Bills are big favorites, the game has a high total, and Dalton Kincaid has touchdown upside. The downsides, for one, are that he isn't even the only tight end that really sees a decent amount of usage on this team. He splits with Dawson Knox as well as Jackson Hawes. Another negative would be that if this is a certified bully beatdown like that old school MTV show of the Miami Dolphins, then the receiving weapons like Dalton Kincaid might not need to be super involved, which is exactly what we saw last week in New Jersey up against the Jets, where Kincaid was the tight end number 19. For the touchdown upside alone, though, he is worthy of a dice roll in the tight end 2 range up against a top 12 matchup for tight ends. Far from a must start, though. Now, when it comes to the Dolphins tight end room, the Miami Dolphins trading for a retired Darren Waller will go down in a CVS receipt of names that were terrible moves by the Miami Dolphins. It is actually not even sad anymore as a fan of this team that they keep making laughable decisions like this. It's just absolutely hilarious. At this point, the Miami Dolphins have no idea what they are doing. If Darren Waller never steps on the field, I think Chris Greer should be fired already, but they should can him instantly for blunders like this. Odell Beckham Jr., there's a laundry list of names of guys that the Miami Dolphins have completely failed on. Tanner Conner is probably the most likely tight end on this team to get a target or two, but we aren't starting a tight end who isn't even guaranteed to get a target, which is exactly what we saw last week up against the Patriots. Next up, we move to Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Green Bay Packers at the Cleveland Browns. Now, Tucker Kraft mac and cheese sliced and diced his way through the Commanders defense like his name was Ghostface on his way to finishing as the tight end number 1. 6 receptions on 7 targets for 124 yards and a touchdown, back-to-back weeks with a touchdown for Mr. Kraft. Now, I will caution you guys that we have seen this before with Kraft, where he has these big games and then he's kind of nowhere to be found. He goes ice cold. The offense still lacks a bunch of red zone weapons, so if they just keep feeding Tucker Kraft, he is going to produce. So I expect this to really be the quote-unquote breakout year for Tucker Kraft. I like him up against the Cleveland Browns. I don't just like him, actually, I love him here, but there is still some worries in the back of my mind, you know, the devil versus the angel on your shoulder. The angel saying, oh my gosh, he's going to keep getting fed like this, but the devil on the shoulder is telling me that, hey, we've seen this before, and it hasn't necessarily ended the best. For the Cleveland Browns, Harold Fannin has ripped off back-to-back top 12 games, beating the Isaiah Likely allegations from last season. 5 of 5 for 48 yards up against the Ravens in Baltimore. This is a smash matchup for tight ends, with the Ravens allowing the second most points to the tight end position on a weekly basis. So with Fannin being reliable, you should feel good about starting him as a low-end tight end 1. Juan Njoku has been out-targeted by Fannin. He is out-snapping Fannin, which is huge for you guys in the point-per-snap leagues. Ultimately, though, I do think we will eventually see that big game out of David Njoku. You definitely don't feel great about starting him at this point in the season, but he hasn't been absolutely fucking you over like Mark Andrews or TJ Hawkinson, so he is still startable as a high-end tight end too. Next up, we move to the Indianapolis Colts at the Tennessee Titans. Now, Tyler Warren is dealing with a toe injury and did not practice on Wednesday. This is an injury that we should be following. It is important to note, though, that if a player doesn't practice on Wednesday, the sky isn't falling. It's not a guarantee that they're out. They could easily play on Sunday. Again, it's important to note. It is important to follow, but if you are someone with Tyler Warren on your team, you shouldn't be in full-on panic mode, hopping in the panic bunker, okay? Warren has been dominant, 50 Shades of Grey style, since stepping foot on the NFL gridiron, back-to-back top 7 showings, and in both games, he had 7+ targets as well as a carry. It appears that Danny Dimes loves him some Tyler Warren, so we will keep rolling with Warren as a high-end tight end 1. He is inside the top 4 on the week for me, an above-average matchup for tight ends. Chig Okonkwo, I think he has the ability to have a big year once Cam Ward figures things out, right? Once Cam Ward gets through the rookie woes, once he figures things out, once he starts playing consistently, then I think Chig really is good enough to have a big season, to be consistent. But again, we have to wait till we see that consistency. He has 10 total targets on the year with 7 receptions. And I really do think once the offense kicks things into high gear, he should be able to be startable. But as of right now, with how Cam Ward has looked, and I think the Indianapolis Colts defense isn't completely dick cheese, I would rather just leave Chig on waivers. Next up, we move to a matchup between the Cincinnati Bengals at the cold-like Minnesota Vikings. Now, Hockenson has not been able to get anything going this season. Nothing short of a disaster if you had drafted him. The hope here is that the matchup here is good on paper, and Carson Wentz just feeds him as the safety blanket. One last ride here for Hockenson. Frankly, though, he is far from a must-start. He is a big letdown based upon where you drafted him. He's in that tight end 2 range. Now, for the Cincinnati Bengals, Mike Licky on my Gesicki Fant did end up playing less snaps in week 2 compared to week 1, so maybe Gesicki's spot as the tight end 1 in this offense is actually cemented, but with Jake Browning under center and a tight end by committee, you definitely don't need to consider him. Next up, we move to the Pittsburgh Steelers at the New England Patriots. Now, Hunter Henry disappointed in a big way up against the Dolphins in Miami. 1 reception on 3 targets for 9 yards as the tight end 44. I don't think things can really get worse than that. In week 1, up against the Raiders, the guy had 8 targets. Ramondre went crazy up against the Dolphins, and I don't think he will be as key in this potential victory, and they will throw the ball a lot more to Hunter Henry. At the end of the day, Henry has proven to us throughout his time in New England that he is reliable. So after 1 down game, I won't turn my back on him in an above-average matchup for tight ends. I got him in the low-end tight end 1 range. Last week, Janu's snaps dipped and Freiermuth's snaps increased. Now, Janu still did play more snaps with 56%. Freiermuth played 50%. I like Janu, and I do think if you compare him versus Freiermuth, it's night and day. Janu is better. But if you are in a split share at tight end, in an offense that really isn't all that great, I have too many question marks to start him. Now, if the Steelers start to play a little bit better, and even if they aren't that great, right, and Janu Smith's able to grab a stranglehold over the tight end snap share, the targets, then we're to be fine starting Janu Smith. But right now, in an offense that has a lot of question marks, with a quarterback that has a lot of question marks, and with a split share that has a lot of question marks written all over it, there's really no need to roll the dice. Next up, we got the Los Angeles Rams at the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, if Dallas Goedert plays, you are more than welcome to play him in a mid-range matchup for tight ends. The Eagles' offense has been very frustrating through the first 2 weeks of the season, so your confidence level can't be the highest on Goedert, but ultimately, in what should be the highest scoring game of the week, potentially. It could be that. It's not a guarantee, but it could be one of the highest scoring games of the week. Goedert could find the end zone and pay off. Coming off a knee injury, though, he probably won't be 100%, so he's in that tight end 2 dart throw range. This could end up being the highest scoring game of the week, like I mentioned with Goedert, so I do really think that this could be the game where Tyler Higbee goes back in time and has a big game, but Higbee's usage doesn't feel locked in enough for me to consider starting him. He didn't get a single target in week 1, and then had 4 last week up against Tennessee with 4 receptions for 37 yards. His tight end partner, Davis Allen, has a touchdown in both games of the year on an offense with Adams, Puka, Kyron Williams. The touchdowns are very unlikely to go the way of Higbee, and with a guy that isn't even very likely to get 5+ targets, he would really need a touchdown to actually push him up to being, a high-end tight end 2. A low-end tight end 1 to where you would have actually wanted to start him. So, To me, if I don't feel like he's getting a lot of red zone opportunities, he just isn't startable or rosterable at this point. Next up, we move to the New York Jumbo Jets at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Mason Taylor is the clear tight end 1 on the Jets. He has just 3 targets through his first 2 games of his career, and I don't think Tyrod is going to make this offense better than what Justin Fields would have this offense operating like. I don't think the offense is going to fall off the edge of a cliff. I don't think they're going to be absolutely dog shit, but I definitely think I would rather have Justin Fields compared to Tyrod for Mason Taylor, unless he just exclusively throws the ball to Mason Taylor because they have the same last name. He should be on your waivers. Now, I really like this spot for Cade Otton's coming out party up against a Jets defense that has struggled up against tight ends. But ultimately, Otton's involvement in the passing attack hasn't looked great. Last week, he had 3 receptions on 4 targets for 25 yards. I do think you will see better games ahead for Otton, and maybe even this week if Emeka Egbuka does miss. So if he does end up missing, I would flip him to a start because I just think he's more likely to see more targets in that scenario. If Egbuka is in, though, I would prefer to stay away from Cade Otton. Next up, we move to the Las Vegas Raiders at the Washington Commanders. But before we break down this game in depth and the rest of the games at the tight end position, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description, you will get a free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $5 on the pick'em, you will get $50 in bonus funds. If you don't know how the pick'em works, on Underdog, it's incredibly simple. You pick at least 2 players, they're higher or they're lower. If both of the picks hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher. Make sure you guys do check that out, promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description. Now, Brock Bowers was a question mark going into week 2 with his knee injury, and ultimately, he did end up playing in that game. He is still limited in practice due to it, but if he played on Monday, the assumption would be that he plays in week 3. His week 2 performance on Monday Night Football was pretty uninspiring for the standards of Brock Bowers, right? Another tight end going 5 receptions on 8 targets for 38 yards, you probably would be pretty happy, but for Brock Bowers, that really isn't the best, and a lot of the blame, sure, you can blame maybe he was a little sluggish due to the injury, but most of the blame, I'm just going to throw on Geno Smith, who legitimately played terribly. Looked like he had no idea what he was doing. Looked like, you know, in Madden, when you're playing in the snow in the new video game and you actually can't see like 5 yards down the field, so you're just like press circle or you press X and you're just like, fuck it, he's down there somewhere and you just throw it, right? And in reality, there's like 4 dudes on that guy. That is how Geno Smith was playing. The play was atrocious. The Commanders allow the 4th most points to the tight end position on a weekly basis, and Bowers is a must-start tight end every week, so you just have to feel good about starting him as a high-end tight end 1. Ertz was the tight end 2 last week and scored 11-plus points in back-to-back games with a touchdown in both showings. In Lambeau last week up against the Packers, he had 6 receptions on 8 targets for 64 yards and a score. I don't think at this point Jaden Daniels is a lock to play. I would probably tend to think that he's not going to play, but that is something to monitor. At the end of the day, though, even if it is Mariota, Ertz is worth a start due to how involved he is in the offensive process, so I got him as a low-end tight end number 1. Next up, we got the Atlanta Falcons and Kyle Pitts at Jatavion Colonel Sanders and the Carolina Panthers. Now, Kyle Pitts let down last week up against the Vikings in Minnesota after a solid week 1 up against the Bucs, though that wasn't really the fault of Pitts, and not because he just wasn't open or he was dropping passes. It was because the team was in control for what felt like the whole entire game up against the Vikings, and that defense couldn't stop Bijan or Algier, so they just kept running like Forrest Gump. Shout out to Jenny. This week up against the Panthers, the thought would be that maybe they actually have to throw the ball more if Bryce Young can play like he did in the second half. So the Panthers allow the 3rd most points to tight ends, so Pitts should be able to be a low-end tight end 1 for me on the week. The Falcons are currently the hardest matchup for tight ends, but the context is key in fantasy football. They went up against Cade Otton, who was coming fresh off of a leg injury, as well as a lingering hamstring soreness. And then they played up against the Vikings, who just refuse to get Hockenson involved. So those numbers are definitely inflated. Sanders was much more involved in the offense last week. 7 receptions on 9 targets for 54 yards. Bryce Young looked very comfortable throwing the ball his way. It is yet to be seen if Bryce Young and Jatavian Sanders together can keep up this pace. But ultimately, if you are struggling with the tight end position and you want to take a dart throw, he is definitely in the fringe tight end 2 start range. Next up, we got the Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars in Duval. Schultz has seen a respectable amount of targets with 9 total through 2 weeks. But with Stroud not looking great and the offensive line being a turnstile, Schultz is not in a position to succeed. And in reality, the only player you can even halfway trust on the Texans is Nico Collins. This is a rough matchup on paper for tight ends up against the Jaguars. Clear stay away, in my opinion, and honestly, you shouldn't even have him on your roster until Trevor Lawrence can figure out how to throw the ball to anyone outside of ETN, Byshal Tootin, and Diami Brown. We can't be rolling out Brenton Strange. I do think he has weekly upside, and I do think he could be good if Trevor Lawrence actually figures it out, but this is a rough matchup. T-Law looks like Dikembe. No. He's looking real rough, so no need to play Strange. Next up, we got the Broncos at the Los Angeles Chargers, the start of the 4 p.m. slate. Last week, Ingram was dealing with a calf injury from week 1 and played on Sunday. They said he was good to go, and the reports were that the issue didn't seem too serious. I was fully expecting Evan Ingram to be good and play whatever the normal workload would be for the Broncos. Instead, the man played just 43% of the snaps, and Adam Troutman, the fish tight end, played 62%. I still think Evan Ingram will be a valuable fantasy asset once he gets healthy, but as of right now, if I can't even project the amount of snaps he's going to play, there's no reason to risk it. Tyler Conklin and Will Dissly are essentially in a 50-50 split for work in this offense. It isn't exactly 50-50 because Conklin saw 50% last week and Dissly saw 40% in week 1. Dissly 57%, Conklin 43%. So, your guess is as good as mine. Who's going to get the 2 fucking targets in this offense this week? No need to start them up against the Broncos. Next up, we got the New Orleans Saints at the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Juwan Johnson may be the waiver wire GOAT of the season, back-to-back top 4 performances, and the guy is getting force-fed the ball. He is Spencer Rattler's safety blanket. He is the safety net. 9+ targets in both games at 15+ points in both games. The Seahawks allow the most amount of points to the tight end position on a weekly basis, so a tight end 1 overall finish is entirely possible this week, which is exactly what he did in week 1 up against the Cardinals. Juwan Johnson is a must-start tight end at this point, and he is a top 8 option. AJ Barner has played 85+% of the snaps in back-to-back games. I do think Elijah Arreo is the better of the, myriad of tight ends that they have in Seattle, but he only plays 40% of the snaps and isn't really in a position to see a ton of volume. Barner did score last week on his 2 receptions for 26 yards. This is a good matchup, but even so, I just can't confidently play AJ Barner because, as you know, if you watch any of my videos, I don't trust Sam Darnold at all, and I will never trust a tight end that has even hit 5 targets yet on the season. Next up, we move to the Dallas Cowboys at the Chicago Bears. Jake Ferguson may be the number 2 target in this offense. I love George Pickens, but honestly, by the end of the year, he may end up out-targeting him. 9 receptions on 12 targets for 78 yards is the tight end 3 for Ferguson up against the Giants. Mid-range matchup for Fergalicious this week. Should be a reliable option, though weekly. Not a top 5 option most weeks, but he has the upside to do so. He's a mid-range tight end 1. Cole Kmet has played 90% of the snaps in back-to-back games, and Loveland played 53% of snaps last week and 57% in week 1. Do you love when your team drafts a tight end, right? If you're a Bears fan, it's just amazing. Like, oh my gosh, let's draft a tight end in the first round, right? And then let's just fucking use Cole Kmet instead of him, right? It makes a lot of sense. Let's draft Luther Burden, but instead we're using fucking Olamide Zaccheaus, right? Yeah, let's do all this stupid shit, right? The Bears, I don't know what is wrong with them. Starting either one of these guys is just a headache waiting to happen. If you had to start one of them, it would be Kmet because he has seen more targets in both games of the season, but you should not have to start either guy. Clear sits, and neither guy should be rostered. Next up, we move to the Arizona Cardinals at the 49ers with George Kittle on IR. Trey McBride may be the safest tight end in fantasy football right now. You can obviously make the argument for Bowers as well, but McBride has a much more competent quarterback. Back-to-back top 12 showings with 7+ targets, and while they have a great talent in Marvin Harrison Jr. on the team, Trey McBride is reliable for Kyler Murray. I just think we are going to look back at McBride at the end of the season and be like, if this dude would have just scored 6 touchdowns, I'm not asking for 10, not asking for 12, 6, 5 touchdowns, right? Even just 5. He could lap all of the other tight ends, but ultimately this dude gets the sniffles when he sees the end zone paint. So even without the touchdown, the volume comes fast and furious. Shout out to Paul Walker. So he's a must-start tight end every week. And with this being a middle-of-the-road matchup, I am feeling real nicey. This is a great matchup for Jake Tongs against the Cardinals, who allow the 6th most points on a weekly basis to tight ends. Tongs was 4 of 5 for 31 yards last week. Sadly for him, though, his tight end compadre Luke Farrell was the one who found the end zone. I think Tongs could be a sneaky start, so if you want to roll with him, go ahead. But the quarterback position may not be, Mac Jones. I don't really trust them. They're saying Mac Jones' teammate Brock Purdy, the real QB1, might come back and be the quarterback too. Weird, right? So maybe they, if things aren't working well, they bench Mac Jones. I don't fucking know. Seems very weird to even just have him be the backup. So there's just a lot of question marks with Mac Jones ultimately. And, if the other tight end's going to be getting the touchdowns, Luke Farrell, it just seems like, you're getting just way too cute playing him. Now we move to, cause you waited all day for Sunday night, the Kansas City Chiefs at the New York Football Giants. Mr. Swift, Travis Kelce, suffered from butterfingers against the Eagles. He should have scored a touchdown, but that one was dropped, and the Eagles picked it off. Back-to-back top 10 performances, though, off the jump. Xavier Worthy will be banged up even if he plays, so Kelce should get 5+ targets and could find the end zone. Great matchup up against the Giants as they allow the 9th most points to the tight end position, so you got to feel good about Kelce as a top 8 tight end. Even with the Giants putting up big numbers offensively up against the Cowboys in Dallas last week, Theo Johnson failed to score 8 points in back-to-back games. He had 4 receptions on 5 targets for 34 yards. He does get the snap share of a guy that you would want to start as a tight end 1. He should be around 80% this week, but in a bad matchup for tight ends, in what is probably going to be a very big come-down-to-earth game for the Giants offense, this is a clear stay-away scenario. Final game here, we are going to move to Monday Night Football, the Detroit Lions at the Baltimore Ravens. Now, my friendship has been ended with Mark Andrews. I love Mark Andrews, and deep down in my soul, I believe that things will get better. But back-to-back games with 2.9 combined PPR points, even in a game that should be very high scoring, I would rather just leave him on my bench over playing him and experiencing what has occurred in the last 2 weeks. The snaps have been there, but just 1 target and then 3 targets. Things are not feeling so good for Mark Andrews, but then again, we saw this last year, right, where the guy was dog shit, and then from week 6 on, very reliable, so I'm not cutting him yet. Laporta did get banged up and left the game for a little bit last week against the Bears. Doesn't appear to be anything to worry about, though. Laporta went nuclear in week 1, 6 of 9 for 79 yards in Green Bay. The Ravens allow the 2nd most points to tight end, so you got to feel good about Laporta here as a locked and loaded top 5 options. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you ended up enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below while you're down there. Whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you leave a like on today's video to help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Check out Underdog, promo code Notorious, or clicking on the link in the video description. I love you long time. Hope you have a great one, and as always, good boy!